Evening all, how are we all doing? Yeah, me too, Festus. Luckily I have an alarm on my phone that reminds me it's stream time. Yep, hello, and all good. So, let's start off by having a look at what I've been doing over the past couple of days, as usual. What have I been doing? I always have to check my own notes because I can always forget. Honestly, brain like a sieve these days. Right, so on the website, you may have noticed from our latest update notes that we now have an integrated bug tracker. So previously we were using Mantis as an open source bug tracker solution, which was fine, and we could integrate that in the game. But it wasn't like proprietary to our needs, and Mantis has a lot of extra stuff that we don't need, and it was taking about 20 seconds to raise a ticket through Mantis. Using the new system, which is now proprietary, it raises a ticket literally in like a second. In fact, I've had to slow it down just so that the successfully raised message lingers on the screen long enough for you to read it. So yeah, it's like instant, which is very cool. It's fully integrated with our StarSim account system. So if you've got an account on the dashboard here, then when you raise tickets from within the game, it actually uses your logged in account to assign the ticket to yourself, which means that on your dashboard, then you also have any tickets that you've raised in the list, and if any of these tickets get updated, then they actually highlight on here as having been updated, and the dashboard link up there will kind of flash gold to let you know that something has progressed on one of the bug tickets you raised. So it kind of gives us a better life cycle for bug reporting, and for someone who finds and raises a bug, it means that you can now actually see the life cycle of the ticket that you've raised, and not just that, but you can also upvote them as well. So if there's a particular bug that you think is nasty and you want fixed sooner, then you can now upvote any ticket. So anyone that has an account can now upvote tickets, and similarly anyone that has an account can also add comments on tickets as well. Some of the old ones that were raised on Mantis directly don't have any game data, obviously, so that's just all blanked out. But any of these newly raised ones, they should have all the data from the game, so that we know where the ship was, we know where the player was standing, and what the hardware was of the PC having the issue. Yeah, so it allows us to really focus in on the specifics of bug tickets, and it allows us to manage them in game far more effectively. And also on that note, if we fire that up a minute, I shall show you what I've done in game too. Yeah, I changed a couple of bits on it today, so that it will accept username or email as a login, and I've also made sure it's case insensitive as well, just to kind of lessen the amount of I can't log in problems that we might have. It has a password reset on there, obviously, but there's only so much you can do. One of the things that we are maintaining, though, is that you have to create an account from the game client, and things like raising bug tickets happen from the game client, in an effort to cut down on bot spam, because what we don't want to do is have to spend all of our time managing the platform. And you know, in all honesty, if you don't have the game client, then there's nothing on the website portal that's particularly useful for you anyway. So it seemed like a worthy compromise. Yeah, so we'll look at this in a sec. But yeah, so when you press F1 now, debug view aside, the bug tracker now matches your in-game customization, and the form for submitting bugs is much more straightforward. You give it a meaningful title, type in what the bug is, hit submit, done. Everything else it does itself in the background, so you shouldn't need to type in anything else. We want to make the process as quick and easy for people as we possibly can. And you also now have the ticket list in-game as well. So I've only just added this, so obviously it needs a bit of tidying up. But what this means is that not only can you see the bugs in-game, but it also means we can manage them in-game as well. So I guess this is not really relevant for players, but for us as developers and QA, we'll be able to just click on one of these and we'll have buttons for teleporting the ship to exactly where the ship was when the bug was reported, and similarly teleporting the character to where the player was standing when the bug was reported. So just from a pure bug fixing and bug ticket management side of things, it makes our job easier because we can set the ship up exactly as it was set up when the bug was reported. It just makes finding these things easier. So if someone says, this moon is inside a planet somewhere and they've raised that as a bug, we don't have to go and make the ship go there by typing in the coordinates. We can literally just click the button on the bug ticket and it will put the ship in the exact same position that it was for the player, which makes our lives easier. But as players, you can at least see whether or not the thing you're about to report has already been raised, and I would encourage, nay beg people to do that, because we do get a lot of duplicate bug tickets raised. So if you're going to raise a bug, just do quickly scan down the list and see whether or not the thing you're raising is already there. Sometimes it's difficult to tell from the title alone, so we'll make it, when you click on it, it will give you the full bug ticket card, so you can see all the details. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing with that, and hopefully that will make just managing the bug fixing side of the game a lot slicker and a lot more integrated with the portal and everything. Let's just fix that a minute. On here I have set this up so that it actually changes states and the buttons turn on and off when stuff's happening, just to make that a little bit more easier to see. And of course, when you're in range of a gas giant, it will fill up. I also added a console command which is temporary until the NPCs can do this themselves. I'm just sticking in a refuel command in case you get lost. So if you set the captain to explore, right now the captain will just keep exploring until the ship runs out of fuel, and then you're stuck. So to save that from happening, we can now fix that with refuel. And you'll notice it only sets the tanks to 10%, which causes this little alert light to flash. So during normal gameplay, if you're playing and all of a sudden out the corner of your eye you notice a flashing light over there, then it's worth checking out, because it means you're about to run out of fuel. It's this is one of the first bits of kind of engineering gameplay that's kind of meaningful on the ship. So running out of fuel has genuine consequences now, because if you let these tanks run dry, you're kind of scuppered really. You got no way of filling them back up again. You're literally stranded in space. So it is something that you need to keep an eye on. But yeah, as I say, if you do get stranded in space, for now, there will be a refuel command that you can type, and it at least just gives you 10% fuel, which is more than enough to get well, probably a good few dozen light years to find a gas giant to fuel up from. So what we need to do tonight is maybe give this NPC some abilities so that they can press the buttons. And then we also need to make sure that the NPC captain is aware when the ship is running low on fuel, and we'll wait until we get to the whole 10% point. So we'll make that our we need to fuel up now marker. So we're going to need some kind of an alert, which then generates an event for the captain, so that the captain belays the current orders and creates a new ship-wide order for refueling the ship. And then obviously our task manager then needs to make sure the ship has been refueled before that task is cleared. Oh, fair point first. Just, yeah, you're right. When the game starts, it sets the tanks to 75%. So yeah, that is another way of fixing it. I hadn't considered that. Obviously, in the future, when this is added to the save data, then your tanks will persist with their load between sessions. AJ, yes, a search might be useful, actually, you're right. Can we get more demo versions out to our Kickstarter supporters? Yes, so yeah, if you didn't know already, anyone who is captain or above on Kickstarter already has access to all of this via the dev builds. For anyone who's not captain or below or above, the demo update is pending, is imminent. So, funnily enough, I got a list now. So we need to take another look at this list of bugs. So there are about 112 bugs right now, and of those 112, some of those are critical, and they're basically blockers and stopping us from putting the demo out. And others are things that I'm happy to put the demo out with, like this one. So, like, the plant falls off the shelf in the XO's office. That's not something that's going to stop us putting the demo out. But some of them are, and a bunch of the multiplayer ones are kind of game breaking. So there will be a public demo update as soon as these game breaking issues have been fixed. It's just a case of how quickly can we get them fixed, basically. And obviously in the meantime, for streams, we're still adding other bits and pieces to this. And I've tried because I haven't always succeeded with this, but I've tried to make sure the things I'm adding on stream don't create more bugs that need fixing, so that we don't get ourselves into this infinite cycle of make something on stream that causes some bugs, and then we spend all of our time up until the next stream just fixing those bugs, and then we make some more. So what we actually end up in is that the demo is never going to come out because we're constantly adding stuff and having to fix it. So I'm trying to break that cycle and make sure that we've still got interesting things to do on streams, but we're not creating things that's slowing the demo release down, because we want to kind of break the back of that so that we're actually so the bug tracker is coming down and we're not pushing those tickets back up again. But part of the work with making the bug tracker more integrated and more usable is to kind of make that process a little bit smoother, so that we can at least speed up the management side of things, so it's not quite so clunky to deal with. Yes, Anasi, at some point we do need to have the over-generation managed on the reactor, so that if you're not currently using the FTL or the shields or the weapons or any of those other really high voltage systems, then the reactor needs to be turned down basically to idle, so that it's just basically replenishing the ship's batteries and nothing else, which will really save on fuel. But of course, every time you want to use the FTL drive, you need to crank the reactor up to full so that it's got the power there to maintain those capacitors. But we don't actually have those capacitors yet, so we can't really do that until we've got those capacitors modeled. In fact, where did the ship even go? No, that wasn't it. No, that wasn't it. There it is. It's because my camera's all over the place. There we go. Yeah, so all the way down through here is going to be the capacitor banks for the FTL ring, and of course then the reactor feed comes down the middle of there as well. So until that's done, we don't really have the hardware in place to make turning the reactor up and down worth it in a way. Obviously all that's coming at some point, sometime between now and Christmas hopefully. But yeah, until then the reactor can just stay as it is. But the way that we're handling this stuff now is every time we do something, and I guess this is the perfect example of that, every time we add something new to the bridge or some kind of functionality, we also then need to teach the NPCs how to deal with that new thing that we've just added. And that's going to be a constant thing now, basically from now on. We build the thing, we add the thing, we make sure it all works. Now we've got to teach the NPC how to use it. It's easily done, Delta, yes. In fact, that's very much part of this panel anyway. So the reactor controls, at least in terms of power, are all supposed to be on here. Given that this is the power panel. I was talking to Claire earlier actually about managing the valves and how much we want that to be done from here and how much it needs to be done from engineering, because it feels a bit cheap to open the valve from this screen when we've got the valves physically down there in the reactor room. It would be nicer to actually have an NPC have to go and actually physically turn the valve on, because then you're interacting with the actual physical hardware rather than just pressing buttons on a UI. But we'll see how that feels when we're playing it, and if there's plenty of other cases where buttons need to be pressed in engineering, then we can have the valves controlled remotely from here. But we'll see. It might be the case that there are other things we can put on here that require button pressing, because what we don't want is for the person or NPC sat in this chair to literally just be staring at output information. We want them to have buttons to press and things to do. So it's this constant balance between what are we doing on the bridge and what are we physically doing in engineering. And we don't want to take things physically away from engineering unless we absolutely have to balance having enough to do on the bridge. So there's going to be a constant ebb and flow there between where the work is managed from, and we'll maybe add a few things, then move them to engineering, and then maybe move them back to the bridge depending on how that play tests. So yeah, so don't expect any of it to be final until all the functionality's in. Yeah, Ian, I think you're right. We just need to make sure that we flag that, and also if there isn't an NPC in the chair, we have to deal with that scenario as well. So if we manage it on the back end so that the ship's computer ultimately is the thing monitoring everything, and then the ship's computer is alerting the people in the chairs, which then makes them react in however they're going to react to that information. So what we kind of need is like an overall, I guess, the ship's computer, like an overall orchestrator, looking at all the sensors, looking at everything on the ship, and then having that ship's computer be the conductor, which is handing the information to the people that need it. So we're kind of basically all minions for the ship's computer. But that gives us that central point of management that doesn't go anywhere. So it's kind of always there, it's omnipresent, and it doesn't matter if someone's sat in the chair or not, because the ship's computer is always running and looking at stuff. So I suppose in terms of what we're building tonight, it might be worth us starting to create the ship's computer kind of data bank side of things, where they start to monitor all of the various systems across the ship, so that they can make an informed decision. Because there are several events that we need to take care of, like running low on fuel is an event that needs somebody's attention, but also if the ship is attacked, so you're getting incoming fire from somewhere, that's another event that needs some kind of response. Or if fire breaks out somewhere, again, you've got an event which needs a response. So we need to roll all that into the same system so that it's centrally managed. Right now, a lot of the different systems are quite modular and quite separate. So I think having one kind of oversight over that might actually be the natural way of bringing all that information together into one place. Yeah, we will have like audible voice alerts. I just need to get on and record them. Pete's or Petez, sorry, I don't quite know how to pronounce your name. We don't track specifically how much someone's paid over time, although we do have that in our records. So we basically rely on the community to kind of remember how much they've paid us. But if someone comes up to us and says, hey, I think I've paid £50 over the lifetime of having backed you, then we can look at that data and say, actually, yes, you have. Here's the next rank. So if your lifetime amount passes the rank boundary, then yes, we will give you that rank. So we don't expect people to pay the £50 on top of what they've already paid. We do kind of add it up over time, but we're not monitoring it. So you'll have to monitor that yourself. Yeah, I don't think we'd get away with a simulated Majel Barrett. That's crossing all kinds of lines. Okay, so we have waffled long enough. Let's start thinking about how we're going to do this. So first and foremost, what we have right now is we have a situation over here on a panel, which is basically isolated and insular, and isn't available elsewhere. So the NPC has no knowledge of what's going on this screen right now, because we haven't told them how, and the captain has no knowledge of what's going on over there. In fact, the captain doesn't even know that fuel usage is even a thing. So we need to build a skill for the captain. So we need to put the logic together for the ship-wide order for refueling the ship. And that's going to have to probably quite simply just find a gas giant fly to the gas giant. When we're in range of the gas giant, open the fuel valves. If we leave range of the gas giant, close the fuel valves, or if the tanks are full, close the full fuel valves. And when the tanks are full, then we can clear the task. Although I think we'll clear the task at maybe 90% full, because there's still a constant drain going. So if we're waiting for 100%, it filling up and then some fuel being used, it's kind of like this continuously. So if we were to wait for 100%, it might never hit 100% because it's constantly doing this. So if we hit 90% as our success rate, then that should be more than sufficient. Yeah, so that's the logic that's happening here. We need to build the logic here for pressing the buttons on the display, and we need to add the engineer to our collection of bridge NPCs. So we'll need the orders button on here so they can see any active orders that are raised. And like the other consoles, it's just going to be very straightforward for now, where it's like open the valves, close the valves. That's it. That's the only two things it needs to know how to do. And similarly, when you're looking at them and you use the radial menu, you're going to need to be able to tell them to open the valves and close the valves as well. So for the captain gameplay, if you are the captain and you've told them to go to a gas giant, you need to then to be able to tell this person, right, open the refill valves, so that you have full control over everything without having to get out of your chair. Okay, so that takes care of handling the refueling for both an NPC captain and a player captain. What that doesn't take care of is the alert that needs to be raised and the belaying of the existing orders, if there are any. So we need to make sure that refuel the ship gets inserted at the top of the list of ship-wide orders, so that the crew immediately pivot to doing that. I think what we might do is create it, clear the existing orders off, so they immediately pivot to the new ones. We'll see how smoothly that goes once we start implementing it. It's difficult to know which bit to do first, to be honest, because there's a few things here that all need to kind of work with one another. So there's no obvious starting point. I suppose this NPC is probably going to be the most useful one. Yeah, so let's have a look at him and start building a logic tree. We're also going to need, actually, probably a struct for the actual orders themselves, because if we get our task manager, we're already defining this in the parent class, so we've got access to all of that. And we get bridge orders. Then at the moment we've only got command helm and sensors, so we're going to have to add the engineering orders to this. So we're basically adding a whole new department across the board to all of the systems that manage things on the bridge. Fortunately, I kind of pre-prepared a bunch of that, so we should have a struct already. Let's have a look. Yeah, those little pixel art bugs on the bug page. These guys. That was one of those like 4 AM funny ideas that I had. Because I was doing the background graphic. I've made it super subtle, so you can barely see it, but there are noise clouds, that's like purlin noise in the background, just kind of slowly fading past, the same way I do it in the game on the in-game UIs. I thought it'd be nice to tie the two together. But while I was doing that, I thought it would be quite funny to have bugs on the bug page, so yeah, I added some in. I thought it's nice that they're kind of pixel arty as well, just to keep it light-hearted. Claire asked me, the first thing Claire did when she saw it is make them squishable. Ah, yeah, which she just said. Yeah, so she wants to be able to click on them and squish them. I also need to make them kind of randomized as well, where they come from. But yeah, I don't want to spend too much time doing that, obviously, because that's taking me away from other more important things. But yeah, I thought it was a fun little thing to add. That's the thing when you're doing things like this. You need to, every now and again, you just need to do something funny and silly just for the sake of it, just to stop you from going mad. Right, so we had actually two folders where we were managing orders, and I've been spreading these things between both of the folders rather stupidly, because now they're all kind of mixed up. I need to unify these folders into an overall task manager system to make it look a bit more sensible. Okay, so if we copy our helm one, I guess we need to do these individually, because as much as we've done helm and sensors, it's not so much the departments we're worried about on the bridge, it's the individual bridge stations themselves. So really that one would be power and the other one would be propulsion next to them. But I don't think we've necessarily... Oh no, we have. I did think ahead. Well done me. I thought I'd put those two under engineering, but no, I didn't. So, hurrah! Yeah. So this is eventually when all the bridge stations are populated, we'll have a struct for each of them for active orders, which means we need to again duplicate this. Call this one power. Keeps opening on the wrong monitor. Okay, so order ID is our unique ID, parent ID is our ship-wide order, if there is one. That's power. So enum bridge orders power. State, that's the same. Objective can be the same. We probably don't need a target, but I'm going to keep the target struct in there anyway, in case we need to store a reference to the gas giant for any reason. Like if we're measuring distance to a gas giant, it would be nice to have that referenced in there as our target, so that we can do the math against it. Okay, and on this one, we need to just change this. So that is struct power. Okay, and again, as we go through the different bridge stations, we'll slowly fill these out and make them active, department by department. I could do it all at once, but going through them one at a time you kind of learn lessons, and you realize that there are certain things you need as you're going through, so it's better to do them one at a time so that you're learning lessons as you go. Okay, so we've got our struct there, we've got that populated there, we've got our enum. So now we need to update the enum to be the actual orders we want. So there's only going to be 2, so it's open refill valves and close refill valves. So in the future, when we have the ability for them to actually turn around and say stuff, we can add things like a situation report on here. So if you were to look at the power guy and say, give me a status report, then they'll turn around and say, deuterium tank is 30% drained and that sort of thing. So we can definitely add that to the list as we go as well, just so that we've got some feedback from those stations for decision making purposes. Okay, so that's that, that's that, that's that. So the next thing we need to do is we need to add all that stuff to the actual task manager itself. So fortunately, I've built the bridge orders side of things to operate as like its own self-contained department, which means all we're actually doing is adding additional checks and systems to our existing structure. So it shouldn't be too arduous to add more. Oops, didn't want to do that. So if we duplicate the helm one, do that, and obviously we then need to add that to our blueprint interface. So create bridge orders. So we need to add new power orders on there, and that's of course struct bridge orders power. And we'll need to do this for all of them. So it's that whole CRUD thing, create, read, update and delete. We need to do that with all of this. So we've got our updated power orders, struct power. I found that with this website work, I find the CRUD side of things to be CRUD. It's called CRUD for a reason. It's so boring doing add, edit, update, delete stuff. It's just like a grind. These, so that one is fine, that one we've done, that one we've done, that one we've done, that one doesn't need it, so that should be it. So engineering on here and the other departments, these ones refer to the actual department down below on the other decks, whereas the bridge one is literally just bridge stations. It took us a while to get to the point where we'd figured that out, but that does seem to be the most logical way of doing it. Hey, Serious Sims. Good to see you. Yeah, so it's probably worth mentioning, just as sort of a public service announcement, that now that we have the portal, as in the portal, it's still accessible under the WIP subdomain, because we haven't kind of got to the point where we're making it fully live yet. So obviously it's live for backers. So again, if you are a backer and have backed the game, then ultimately you're going to need to make an account on here to access your backer rewards. So things like the in-game Cluck plush, the backer patches for the uniforms, and any other thing that we need to give people as backers that are in-game. Obviously we need some way of authenticating that you are a backer and have access to those things. So the website is absolutely the easiest way of doing that, because it's also like platform agnostic. So it doesn't matter if we're on Steam or we're on the Epic Store, or even if we're on console. This website is kind of like the single source of truth. So if you're logged into this website, then the game knows who you are and it knows to give you your stuff. Like the Caravella, for example, which can now be selected for people that are admirals. So if you haven't already signed up for an account, then all you need to do is download the dev build, go to the settings on the main menu, and you'll find there's now an account option under settings. You need to create your account from there. So you can't create an account from the website, because we want to make sure that it all goes via the game client. So the game client is I guess the first step in the process. So you can register an account via the game client, and at that point the game client is the thing that speaks to the website. So the things you do in game are fired to the website from the web client, not the other way around. So the website cannot update the game client in any way. So if you've got access to the dev build, download it, sign up an account, and if you want to, because it's fully optional, you can register yourself a vessel, and then you can join everyone else exploring the galaxy. How many do we have now, actually? There we go, 66. So right now we have 66 registered vessels that are currently exploring the galaxy. Obviously over time I'm sure that's going to be multiple thousands of vessels. At least I hope it will be multiple thousands of vessels. Yeah, we might need to remove the all option and just stick to the org tags, but yeah. And then when we do the public demo update, we will make this live, like as the default on the domain. Obviously, if you go to sign up an account, it says on the sign up page, you need to do this from the game client. And anyone on the demo obviously can't do that yet because we haven't added it to the demo. So that's just going to confuse people. So once the demo update goes live, we will then make this live publicly, and yeah, then we can take it from there. But yeah, we've got, I think, about 6,000 backers, and only about 150 accounts on here. So we're like 5,800 odd people short of signing up accounts. And the other thing, actually, that's worth bringing up while I'm bringing it up is we will be transitioning to the in-game credits, reading from here as well. Because right now, drawing the credits in the game requires that I manually update a spreadsheet and then manually upload that using a SQL statement in order for the game to then pull that from a SQL database in a really unsecure way. Because this is using the REST API, this is a lot more secure. So we want to make sure that our in-game credits is generated from the backers that we have registered on the website. So if you don't sign up an account on the website, that means your name won't go in the credits, because this is where the data is now coming from. And it also allows all that to be automated so that we don't have to manually pass spreadsheets around everywhere, which is obviously not a process that can continue long term. So it's putting all of the information in a nice secure place where we can automate things, we can read the data we need, which means the game's always up to date. And like from the moment you create an account, and then from the moment that Claire assigns you your backer role, it immediately updates the game live on the credits and that sort of thing, which means that the credits will never go out of date because they are literally reading from the website data. It just keeps everything nicely in sync. Anyway, I think I've banged on about that enough. I wish there was a shortcut for add reroute node. I mean, I'm sure there might be, but I'd like to be able to just drag with the key held down so I don't have to find the reroute node every time. If anyone knows how to do that, then please let me know. Hopefully, Ian. Yeah, I've paid Ionos for the performance database as opposed to their standard database, so you get an extra 5 gig of storage and better access time and more resource usage. So hopefully that's enough. If it's not, then obviously we'll just upgrade the infrastructure and pay for a better hosting solution. It shouldn't be too bad because the ships themselves are updating once per minute. So you're talking about a coordinate update every 60 seconds. Now, obviously, if you've got 1,000 ships that are currently all at once, and obviously you have to be online and playing. So the question is, how many concurrent players do we expect to have at any particular time? When updates go out, obviously the number of concurrent players goes up, and then it just drops back down again after the update. Everyone downloads it, they check it out, and then they go back to whatever they were doing. So on our peak concurrent users, which I can't remember off the top of my head, I think we might have hit 1,000 at one point back when we had Kickstarter. But generally speaking, concurrent users sits around 150 to 200. So it's that times 60. That's how many updates we'll have per minute, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a huge amount for just sending a set of coordinates. So we should be all right. But obviously we'll just assess over time. If it becomes not all right, then we just need to pay for more bandwidth. Oh, thanks, Koji. Let's try that. So if I hold down R... Oh! Apparently holding down R works. Oh, hang on, did I make one there as well? Okay, that worked too well. So if I drag a pin and press R... Oh my god, look at that! Oh, that's a lifesaver. Thank you, you've just made my day. The amount of times I have to just like scroll down and find the button. Well, that's me entertained. Yes, Dave, you do make a good point. It is a free-to-play game, so until we are selling any kind of box sale in terms of ships or the Founders Edition or the expansions, then money is very much a finite resource. So yeah, there's only so much we could persist with that. But like, I don't think Ionis is that much at the moment. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's like £30 a month or something. It's not, it's not an extreme amount of money. I don't need that. Can all go. Okay, next. I'm weirdly happy to be able to do that. So that should be our add, edit and delete. So we've got create, update and cancel. Okay, and yeah, that's just updating our struct. Where is it? Yeah, that's updating that, which means that's what we're grabbing with our blueprint interface. So that's just our ship-wide stuff. So we're going to have to make sure we cancel anything in there. Wondering actually whether we need 2 updates on this, because helm sensors command. Yes, we definitely need the parent ID there for helm. Yeah, so this one definitely would be power, and we definitely want the parent ID there. Okay. Let's call these something meaningful. Clear helm by parent ID. That's clear sensors by parent ID. That's clear command by ID. That one's clear power by parent ID. Yep. Just make sure that we clear them off when we it says belay orders, but this is actually the cancel function. I need to go and rename it at some point. Don't think there's any department stuff here. Nope, that one's fine. That one's fine. Kind of not using this anymore, so that can all probably be deleted. I should leave it for now, but we shouldn't need it. Okay. Now so these are our main logic ticks. So we are basically looking to see whether or not the completion criteria has been met. So we need to make sure that we include power orders in that. Build from the helm one again. So these are all the checks that we do on the helm to see whether or not those objectives have actually been met or not. Sorry, sensors, not helm. As you can see, there's a lot of them. So what we need to do is refresh that. Get that, and then switch on that, and then unlike sensors, there's only like literally two things that we're doing, so we don't need most of this. In fact, let's just go loop and get rid of it all. Yeah, I was going to say, do we need them to check to see whether the tanks are full? But I don't think we do, because the captain's the one issuing the order to close the valves, and they'll get a captain message to say that the tanks are full, which then triggers them to turn around and speak to the person and say, right, now you need to do a thing. So yeah, so it should only just be these two things. So check, open refill valves. May as well call it the same as what it is, just so we don't get confused. So we're just checking those orders, and then we do our logic. So we will get rid of all of that. So what we'll want to do is have a reference to the things we're actually checking. So we need a reference to the pertinent valves in this instance, and then we need to check to see whether or not those valves have indeed been opened or closed. Fortunately, here's one I prepared earlier. Oh no, that's the tanks. Don't want the tanks. Oh no, hang on. No, yes we do. We do want them. No, we don't care about the tanks. We want the valves. Fortunately, here's one I prepared earlier. Valves. There we go. So on begin play, and this is another thing that we're going to have to improve upon, is right now we've got the UI getting a hard reference to the valves. We've got the underlying blueprint getting a hard reference to the tanks in addition to the UI. And now we're also going to have our task manager also getting a hard reference to the valves, which means we've now got multiple classes all making hard references to things, which is not great for reference chains. So what we need to do is instead we kind of need a central engineering map, I suppose, of all of the different ship systems and all of their current states. So we need I guess a ship-wide engineering state file, so that we can query the state file for the things we're interested in. So each thing is still going to need a unique ID. So every button on every UI needs a unique ID. Every interface, every switch, all of it all needs unique IDs. And that needs to be set up like a network, basically. So I was a Cisco network engineer in a previous life, and I'm fairly familiar with the architecture of a network. So I'm kind of building it in the game in the same way, so that every interface has an ID, every link has an ID, so that when we build that engineering state file, we can query those things like specifically. And also, once we have that, we can also have typed consoles on the UIs, so that like when you administrate a Cisco router, for example, you could like SSH into a router and you can open and close interfaces literally by the command line. And I think it would be really cool if we had the same thing in the game, where you could bring up a terminal window on any of the UIs and actually type in the address of something like this valve and remotely close the valve literally from the terminal window on a UI in the game. That's going to be awesome when we get to that point, especially when it comes to like hacking. So let's say you board an alien vessel, or you board another human vessel, all the doors are locked. So it's like the hacking gameplay can literally be bring up a terminal window, like do a directory listing, find a listing of the interfaces, connect to that interface, like say the door, and then run a open command from the terminal to open the door because the buttons are broken or smashed in some way. So all that gameplay is possible once we formalize the structure of this and have it stored in some kind of an addressable state file. It opens many, many doors for us, which I think would be cool. For now, we'll just do hard references. No, I've never played Uplink. Yeah, parsing command lines is easy. So we're already doing that on the chat box. So when you type in like /console and then a console command, it's literally parsing that and obviously firing that off to the UE5 console. Same with typing /refuel as opposed to just typing. It's actually parsing the command line and actually extracting the commands from that. So the hard work there is already done. So armed with our references, manage bridge tasks, power orders, valves. So we just get a reference to our valves, and then we get where's our open state? There. And it's replicated already as well, which makes it nice. So this is open valves. So basically, I guess we want an and on this one. So we want all three of these to be true. So if all of them are true, then we can get our bridge. Grab our power orders. Remove. Okay, and then we simply remove the index that we would have piped in already. Okay, so if all three valves are open, we return true, and we can remove the index. And then in addition to that, we also need to alert the UIs that we have done this using that. Otherwise the UIs won't know that we've done anything. This just sends a dummy payload on that channel. So whenever that channel has any activity, the UIs go, ooh, I should probably refresh. That solves that. There we go. And then on this one, same thing. Checking I wasn't doing anything different. So this time we want the inverse of this. So we want to make sure that all of them are false. So we invert those booleans. Okay, so if all of those are reporting false, then that creates true, in which case we remove that task because it can be deemed as being satisfied. And then we update the UIs. Right, that should be it. And I don't think we're going to need that specifically. Yeah, so that should literally be it. So we've now got the ability to raise the order. We've got the ability to check completion on that order. So the next step in the process is going to be, I suppose, raising that order via the radial menu. Not that the NPC will know what to do with it yet, because the NPC obviously hasn't been trained in that regard. So we're going to need our chair master, because this is where we when we look at the chair, obviously we respond back with what the radial menu should be for that object. So we want a radial menu for engineering power. Now, right now it's not giving anything because there's nothing to do in this particular chair. So if we basically copy what we've done for the helm, and then we'll whittle it down to what we actually need for power. Thankfully, I already pre-created these, so I've saved myself a bit of hassle. Thank you, past me. Okay, so cancel current orders we will leave. So make that power, and the actual action ID would be power cancel orders, and we shall check against power. Okay, so all stop we don't want, use command target we don't want, so those are not relevant, that's not relevant, yeah, and they are not relevant. Great, so all we need then is cancel orders, because I need that anyway, and set these ones to power. So we've got open, refill valves, remembering to put that down on a second line, because otherwise it will overflow the menu. And this one is close refill valves. So power open valves. So this string is what we use to identify what command order is actually being passed through. So when we click the menu item on the radial menu, it sends this action ID through to the player controller, and then we filter from there as to what that is based on the channel that it's going in on. So we send a channel and an action ID, and then we can kind of filter from there. Oh, disaster. I have a squishy stress ball that I kind of squeeze while I'm working, because who doesn't need a desk squishy stress ball? And it's just burst and now it's leaking sticky stuff everywhere. Yay. I shall put that to one side. I squeezed it too vigorously. So we could do with doing a state check on the valves, so that so if they're already open, then obviously we don't want to raise an order to open them. So we could actually do a check here to see whether or not we're going to do that. I think I'll leave it as true for now, so the menu option will always be there. But yeah, for future reasons, we can actually state check on that. But in order to do the state check, we'll have to make even more hard references to those valves. Not that this is the valves, but yeah. Because then this will need to know a reference to the valves. So I think we'll wait until we've got our engineering state file, and then we'll do the check from there. For now, we'll just assume true. Okay, and that should be everything for the radial menu. So I think we are almost at a point where we can give this a whirl, actually. Suppose let's just make sure we've done the player controller bit. Looks like Discord's over its problems. That's good to see. Okay, so here is the channel check that I mentioned just now. So the order comes through from the radial menu. I thought I'd called it radial menu, obviously not, but yeah, so this comes through as a client action. We then turn it into a server authoritative action, and then from this point, basically it's the server that's doing all of this. So we simply need to add a new gameplay tag onto here. So if we do our radial menu, no, not that one. Bridge command, there it is. Bridge commands, power. So that's our broadcast channel. And as I said, this is our string, our action ID that we're piping through. So now any orders that come through on the power channel will now get handled from this pin here, as opposed to going out the default channel, where it will literally just broadcast to the game app wide that message that comes through. So rather than targeting it specifically at a system, it just sends it to the entire game and says, right, this has just happened. If any of you care, do something about it. It's very much fire and forget. But we will borrow our helm one again because it's less on it than sensors. So handle power orders. So all we do is we switch on the string of whatever that was, and if you recall, it was power open valves and then power close valves. Actually, we also had the cancel orders, didn't we? What channel's that going on? Also on power. Let me just check helm to see how it's managed on there. Yeah, it is going through the helm. So we're going to need to add power cancel orders to that list as well. Okay, yeah, and all the other ones we can delete. Okay, so there's our 3 things for the engineering. We'll keep that one and redo it for power. So power cancel orders. And what are we doing? So stick power orders in there. Break the struct to give us our order ID. Clean that up. Bridge station is power. And that's it done. So we're simply getting the current top order that we're currently doing, and we're just saying on the task manager, cancel this. So it just removes that from the task manager. If there's a process ticking in the background, like a ship-wide order that's running, then it's expecting there to be an order there in the system. So if you cancel that order, it will immediately recreate it again, because it doesn't know that you cancelled it for a reason. So you'd have to cancel the ship-wide order, which would cancel the sub-orders per station anyway. But just bear in mind that if you're looking at the helm and the helm's going somewhere and you keep telling them to cancel the order and it keeps coming back, that'll be because there's a ship-wide order, which is basically overruling it and constantly creating new orders. Right, and then we have to open the valves. So we're going to create power orders, and as you can see here, we've got one entry for each bridge station. So as we do all 11 bridge stations, there'll be like all those down there. But the reason we're doing them separately is because each bridge station over time is going to need different data as part of its orders. So we can't just do a generic bridge orders struct, because we'd have to add all the proprietary stuff for each station all in the same struct, which just bloats that struct with stuff that we don't want. So in the long run, it's more flexible for us to split it. So there's a separate struct, which is proprietary for each of the different bridge stations. And then we can add stuff to this without it affecting that one. Okay, so the orders is open refill valves. And we'll just say open the refill valves. Goes in as a pending order, and we don't need to give it a target. We can give it a target at some point if we need to, but for now we shan't bother. Okay, Okay, so let's rename this one power open refill valves, power close refill valves. Again, we'll just get rid of all the stuff that's there, replace it with the much simpler version, and just change that to close and change that to close. And that should literally be it. Yeah, that's it. That's all we need to do. So we should now be at the point where when we click the radial menu, it should now raise a set of orders that appear on the UI. Now, speaking of UIs, we need to add an orders readout on here so that you can press the button and see active orders, so that you as a player can sit in this chair and act as the engineer, because you'll have orders popping up on the screen. But similarly, on here, of course, we now need to add a third column to our display, because we've got more orders to add. So we've obviously got helm and sensors, but of course now we also have engineering power. Now obviously this has been a placeholder the whole time and continues to be so, because it's not big enough, there's not enough room. So we're going to have to make a list item for power orders, in the same way that we have separate list items for these. At least I'm assuming we do. I'd be surprised if we didn't. Yeah, so helm command list item and sensors command list item. What we can possibly do is collapse these down a bit. I'm not sure that we need quite so much information on here. Because then we could fit maybe 3 abreast. Because the idea ultimately is we'll have one screen that lists all of the orders popping up and disappearing for all of the bridge stations. Kinda similar to how we've got it here. We just need more screen space, and then we can have maybe like a diagram of the bridge. And in the same way that we'll use that bridge diagram for clicking the different stations for bringing up the holo display, we can use that same bridge diagram for showing the orders. Hang on, let's find the right tab. So if you imagine a picture of the bridge flooring on here, then we can have these orders popping up over those stations, or at least maybe coming up with numbers above those stations to show how many orders are pending. And then you can just click that to see the actual list. That might be a cleaner way of doing it. Again, because we've got helm, science, comms, tactical, defense, engineering, other engineering, internal security, and what was the other one? Environmental control. Yeah, that's at least 9. Because I guess we won't. Well, I suppose we should really class the command as a 10th one, because there will be command orders that pop up. So they can see their own orders too, although we do have a separate tab for that. Yeah, it'd be better to unify that under one UI and make it look pretty. I'll think on that. But for now, we definitely need to put the engineering one on here. So it's generally speaking, unless you're queuing up lots of different helm targets, there's only usually one order at a time. So we potentially don't need these to be quite so big. So what I could do is just have it display whatever the current order is. And obviously you can scroll down if there's more. And that gives us room enough to add, the other ones. Something like that. And obviously we need to create that list item. So if we duplicate that one, of course we're going to need a power version of it anyway. I do have, or did have, yeah, the engineering one. I might delete that and use a copy of the helm one. Oh, no, I didn't want to delete it. I wish they wouldn't put delete and duplicate next to each other, because that gets me sometimes. Right, so that's the power one for the command list. And we shouldn't need the fields to be vastly different. We don't need, I suppose we don't need this. So that can go. Don't need to worry about mappings. Yeah, we pop that there. Then pop that. Oops. That'll do. Okay, it's nice and simple. Just gets it there. And then we can just delete the stuff that we don't want, because we don't have to worry about coordinates or anything. So literally we only care about the ID, the title and the description. That's all that's important to us. And then yeah, so that needs to be cast to power command. And then helm orders needs to be renamed to power orders. And hang on a minute. Why do I have that twice? Oh, I see. I see what I'm doing wrong. I was confused by the naming convention. DirectX 12 by default. We support Vulkan purely for people that are running on Linux, but we don't support it. It's something we provide on a reasonable endeavors basis. Yep, so that can set there. Then we'll break that one. Okay, we don't need the target, which means we don't need that. So we need our order ID. We need our orders. And then we need our description. We don't need anything else. Okay, which means we don't need that. Make sure we fix that so the cancel button works. Okay, that should be fine now. Great. Okay, so when we cancel it, we simply get our orders and cancel them off there, and yeah, we just populate the details from there. But that does mean that on here we need to be able to populate those list views. So call that one list view power. If we grab the Helm one, okay, so if we insert it underneath, right, so when we get a message on the power channel, we're going to clear the list view for power. We're going to get the power orders, and then we're going to construct list power command. I'm going to construct that, put in the power orders, and then add it to our list view, and we just give it a reference to this blueprint so that it can come back and do stuff with it. Okay, that should be all we need to do. So we've got raising it on the radial menu, we've got player controller, raising the actual task. We've got the task that should appear on here, and we've got the ability to close it. And the state check should also be working. So yeah, I think we're at the point now where we can just give it a try and see what's working and what isn't. Yeah, we're building the NPC orders for being able to refuel the ship. So right now we're doing the engineer sat in that particular chair. Ah, Micro, thank you. And yes, ice giants are the best source of helium-3. In the future, once we have proper gas modelling on the gas giants beyond simple hydrogen-helium split, we will do actual chemical parts per million per gas giant. So different tanks will fill at different speeds depending on parts per million of that gas in the gas giant. So generally speaking, you'll find that helium-3 will fill up more quickly from an ice giant because of their composition. But then you might get a gas giant which is really abundant with it, and you'll find that that one's actually really quicker. So it might be the case that you might have two gas giants in a system that both have an abundance of a particular gas, but then a deficit of others. So you might actually find yourself going to two gas giants to fill all three tanks, depending on how abundant the resource is in their atmosphere. Okay, so I'll make this 3 lines so it's not all overflowing. So we've got open and close refill valves as orders. Now right now, so if we click open, they're not going to do anything because we haven't told them how, but we should have orders coming up there. Unless... No, that's fine. Let's just try the close one. So I don't know whether or not the tracker is just immediately nuking it the moment it comes up. Not seeing anything come up. Oh, I know why. I don't think I told the UI. Hang on, I didn't change the list view type on here. That would make a difference. My bad. Yeah, the gas refill rate does get quicker as you fly towards a gas giant. The refill rates are a bit weird at the moment. Like for some reason, Saturn isn't offering anything at all, whereas some random gas giant that Claire was on earlier, it filled the tanks up in seconds. So something's not quite right with the math there. But the way it calculates it currently, obviously this is not how it will be eventually, but right now, at 1.25 the gas giant's radius is where the maximum capacity is achieved. At 1.75 the gas giant's radius, as in that's how far away you are, that's where it stops refueling entirely. When the ship arrives, it's 1.5 away. So your arrival point on a gas giant with the autopilot is kind of like halfway in the scale. So if you manually fly closer, you'll refill quicker. If you manually fly away, you'll refill more slowly. So we've put it so that the autopilot is about 50% efficient. All right, let's try this again. So nothing on the console. Open refill valves. Nothing. Close refill valves. Nothing. Okay. Right, let's follow the breadcrumb trail and figure out where it's stopping. Okay, so I suppose the very first place we need to check before anything else is making sure that the order is coming through into the player controller. So let's do a spam here. So order received by player I can't spell today. Well, to be honest, I can't spell most days. Order received by player controller. Let's make it linger for 5 seconds so that we have time to read it. Okay, and then we've got this one, which is order successfully routed to successfully routed via gameplay messaging subsystem, and then definitely giving it everything it needs. Order sent to task manager by player controller. Okay. And then I suppose on our task manager, because we are, hang on, where's the event graph? There it is. Raising orders here, so task manager creating bridge orders. Task manager creating power orders. Power orders created. Created. Sure that we're actually doing that. Make sure that says power, not that it matters because that struct is power. Okay, so that trail of debugs should hopefully tell us either where it's stopping or is it even getting that far. Yeah, we don't have a hard number yet for how much the ship's lighting and life support uses, because obviously all of these lights around here are not connected to power. They're just magically working. It's only the inner rings that are on the live power grid. So once we add all the lights across all the ship and all the pumps and the life support stuff, the water filtering, like all that stuff's all going to be using power. So that will give us our baseline once it's all running. And then what we need to do is make sure we work out what reactor percentage is needed to break even, so that we're neither charging nor draining the batteries. So our idle state for the reactor will be the break even point for the ship. Because once those batteries are charged and if those batteries are not discharging enough, then we're making more power than we need, and then we're back to that needing to vent plasma overboard, because all of a sudden we're making excess power. So it needs to be a finely balanced system. Right, okay. So let's keep an eye on this debug spam. So power orders created, it says. Okay. So it reckons it's creating them. Power order created. Yep. Right, so it's going to be one of two things then. Either the UI itself is not updating, or it's lying when it says it's created them. So I think what we'll do is if we grab that, and then we'll get the first one in the list, and we'll actually check that that's literally there properly. Okay, successfully raised. And I'll just stick the objective in there. And we'll make that linger for longer, and we'll make it green. Right, so that should tell us whether it's actually raised something, because we're getting it from the array directly. And then the other place it could be failing is on the command console itself. So we've got our list view power, we've got our list view command list item. So on initialized, we're listening for messages on bridge commands power, which we know we're doing. Clearing power list item. We're getting the array, and that's the same array that we were just querying for the debug message. Make sure that that's the same one. Yep. Make sure that's power command. Yep. Oh, look. That's the problem right there. We are raising it against the wrong list view. It's usually something stupid like that. And it's usually my fault, obviously. Because me, good question. Yeah, I see no reason why you can't customize those values yourself. So the classification of what makes an ice giant, as opposed to it just being another gas giant, is related to its chemical makeup. Saturn and Uranus have different chemical compositions to Jupiter and Saturn. I mean, they're not hugely different, but they're different enough that they're classed differently. So I think the way we're going to handle a lot of the stuff on the custom system tool is we'll do it by way of you pick a class of object, and that limits the bounds in which you can tweak the dials essentially. So every type of planet will have an upper and lower limit for certain values, so that it stays true to science. And indeed, when you go to place a planet within a system, it will take the equilibrium temperature of that point in space, depending on the distance to the star, and that equilibrium temperature will again determine what type of object could actually exist there, because it's based on, obviously, temperature and solar wind during the formation phase, and you can't have something like an ice giant right up against a star, because that will completely change the class of object that it is. So yeah, there will be guardrails to ensure scientific accuracy, but within those guardrails, I see no reason why specifying chemical percentages wouldn't be a thing. Okay, open refill valves. Why? So it reckons it's raised the order, well, and it has. So in order for that message in green to say open the refill valves, it means the order is definitely in the system. Similarly, close refill valves is also saying open. Huh? Open. And also open. Could just be a typo. The fact that it's not showing on here must be something to do with this. I suppose we also need to add it on here as well, just to see. I guess we can't proceed with the captain side of it until the NPC is able to actually do the job. Yeah, so the range on a single tank is something that we will adjust over time, because there's, again, and the issue with being completely scientifically accurate with this is that we need to think about how much helium-3 and deuterium do we actually need to produce the unit of power that we're saying the reactor is producing. Now, obviously, we've got some sort of sci-fi flexibility with that. We can have some kind of sci-fi tech which either improves or adjusts the calculation in some way. But the amount of fuel we're taking from the tanks has to be at least somewhat realistic for the amount of energy we're creating. So we need to go through and do the math on that. So, like, if you are generating however much power we're generating, how long would a 100,000 litre tank last? From my knowledge, I think we are in a real reactor sipping a very small amount of fuel to create the fusion reaction. And of course, real fusion reactors aren't like a constant power, they're pulsed. And I know certainly the ones we're looking at are pulsed. So the ones that create FRCs and ram them together, the act of firing those two plasmas towards one another and having them collide, and then spinning them for the duration that they're generating fusion, that whole process is over very quickly. So it's more of like a poof, 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 poof kind of reactor where it's pulsing. So it's how much fuel are we using per pulse, and then how many pulses per second is the reactor currently doing. And we will have the reactor pulsing while it's operating and making a nice big whoomp 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 noise as well, because why wouldn't we? Yeah, so we need to do the math on all of that, and then we'll know what the actual fuel usage rate would be realistic to the tank size. Because I think in all honesty, I think our tanks are probably way too big for the amount of fuel we'll be using, but we'll see. We'll keep it realistic. Yeah, again, I mean, if you were to expand 100,000 litres of liquid helium, then what would that be in terms of volume of gas? I imagine it would be a lot of gas, because that liquid is going to expand a lot. Yeah, Max, definitely. So we want, again, this goes down to that whole gameplay versus realism balance, and also convenience over annoyance. So we definitely don't want the reactor running full the whole time, because it's unrealistic and it means the ship's just going to be constantly venting plasma, because venting excess energy is going to be part of how the system works. So if you've got the reactor turned up and the FTL drive is turned off, then the ship is going to be squirting out plasma, and you'll see like a big cloud of plasma coming out behind you. That's less than ideal. So constantly turning the reactor up and down is going to be part of the normal operation of the ship. Now, you would then correctly argue that in the real world, that would be automated. We'd have a system that took care of that. But if we were to automate it, we're taking someone's job away on the ship. And there are a lot of things on the ship which could quite rightly be automated, and realistically in the real world would be automated. But for every single thing that we automate, we've removed a bit of gameplay. Because all of a sudden, you don't need to press that button anymore, because the ship's computer's doing it for you. So there's a sweet spot there somewhere, that there's a happy middle ground where we have a realistic amount of automation without removing too much agency from the player, so that you still have buttons to press and things to do. So it's going to be a balancing act. But again, like I said earlier, we can't really hone in on that and decide what things will be automated until the entire ship systems are complete, because then we'll have a clearer picture of just how much work is there that needs to be done here. Like just with maintaining and operating the reactor alone, there might be quite a lot of busy jobs that need doing just to keep things ticking over, and if those busy jobs are keeping people busy enough, then that kind of opens the opportunity for some of it to be automated. But it's all going to be a balancing act based on gameplay testing. But fundamentally, yes, the reactor does need to be turned up and down regularly. Yeah, I mean, if we were doing this like realistically, so the game is set in 2261, so we're talking like 200 odd years from now. In 200 odd years from now, AI is going to be unlike anything that we can probably even predict. Once that singularity happens, and once exponential growth happens with AI capability, which it will, once it's training itself, it will exponentially explode in terms of capability. Kind of casting that forward 200 years, I don't think human crews would ever be needed or would ever be practical. We would have the entire ship run by AI. We'd have hundreds of them, all just automatedly exploring the galaxy. Human crews would be the weakest link in the chain. But of course, that's no fun, and that's not gameplay. So yeah, so we're kind of just quite happily ignoring that fact. But yeah, in the realistic sense, yeah, there's no way that this wouldn't all be automated. I mean, we can practically do that now. I mean, just look at the SpaceX capsule. The Dragon capsule has no human intervention at all. it can take off, fly to the ISS and dock without humans touching any controls, and the other way, leave and land without humans being involved. So if we can do that now, then just imagine what would be possible in 200 years. Yeah, I guess the other thing is, you're right, in terms of the story behind the game, we could roll in some kind of AI catastrophe to kind of explain why everything isn't all automated. Yeah, I'll have a think on that one, because that could definitely introduce a few interesting story points. Rogue AI makes for interesting drama. I mean, the ship's computer has to go evil at some point, surely. Actually, I'll leave this for a minute so that we have visibility of what's actually being raised. And on here, I think we might have just typoed. Ah, yeah. Oh no, we did put close. Close, close. Close refill valves. Close the refill valves. And then open and open. Okay. I was expecting the close one to say open somewhere to explain why it was saying open twice. The fact that it doesn't is a little bit confusing. Okay. Curious. Okay, get rid of some of this spammage we don't need. I guess the other thing we'll check real quick is the player character. Now, I don't think we have anything order related with the character, because everything that it does for this stuff all comes through here. So yeah, so when you press the button on the radial menu, and the radial menu is being created by the character, it simply passes that straight through to the player controller, where it does command order, and that's what we're seeing here. So all the player character is doing is triggering this, which of course then in turn does this. So end to end, I think that's absolutely fine. So we need to have a look at what the chair's doing. So vehicle master. So we've got all the dismiss and sitting stuff. Nothing pertinent there. Yeah, so this is all the pertinent stuff. So we've got open valves and close valves. That's the other place it could have been off, but we definitely have close valves there. And then just to confirm on here, because this is that same string that's being passed through. Yeah, so this string that we put here, open valves and close valves, is exactly the same string we're passing through and then processing here. So open valves, close valves. Obviously, these strings have to be spelt the same. If I made a typo somewhere, then these would no longer be valid and they'd be skipped. But close goes into close, which says close, which says close. So we are definitely raising that. Oh, you know what? I think I know what it is. It's on the task manager. Of course, we're raising multiple orders, and we're only getting the first one. So if we were to do this quite rightly, we would do this instead. So now we're actually listing all of the orders. Which would be order in system, and then it just quotes what that order is. So if we make lots of them, it will start adding them all up. And then if we just to separate them out, if we do that, then it will draw a line under it, so we know each one. We know that we can separate each loop. Right, which means the issue must be on the command console itself. Here. So when the console's initialized, we are listening for bridge commands power, and then we'll just confirm on the task manager that we are in fact updating bridge commands.power with our dummy payload. Need to make sure that the struct we're sending is the same, otherwise it won't fire. And then on the UI, where is it? There it is. So bridge commands.power, dummy struct, clearing the list view for power, definitely getting those, definitely making power list view item, and we're definitely adding that one to that. Let's just refresh that node, just in case that was messing us up. Everything else should be normal. And I think what we'll do as well is we will also do a bit of debug on here to make sure that this loop actually has the right number of things in it, and that will tell us whether or not we're even getting this far and this is firing. I'll do the same thing here. We will just grab that, literally just spam out the name of the string. Right, let's see what we can see. Obviously we need them to be on the list, because otherwise we can't verify that we're actually detecting completion states, because we need them to then disappear off the list when we press the valves. It could be in a loop, never, yeah. Obviously we've got a tick running, checking completion stats. So if the order is completed, then yes, it would be removed. I can disable that and see whether or not that is indeed the problem. I've not seen the third Battlestar Galactica. I was quite happy with the second one. apart from all the Gaius Boltar stuff, I could have done without that, to be honest. That was probably my least favourite part of it. Right then, let's see what happens. Okay, so that's interesting. So we didn't get any pinky purpley text come up, which means that the UI didn't react to us raising that order. So we've got open and close. Now, interestingly, you'll see that the close one has disappeared. So if I raise another close one, it's there initially. If I make another open one to refresh the list, you'll see the close one has gone. And the reason for that is that all three valves are closed. If we open all three valves, now obviously nothing's going to come up on here until I refresh it. But if I now raise an order to open the valves again, you'll see that there's just the one of them. And if I make an order to close the valves, you see the open one's gone away. So that tells us that the task manager is correctly doing its completion check, and it's correctly flagging that the states have been met. So that's good. So the order side of things is all working. We're raising orders, we're checking completion of orders, and that's for both open and closed, and it's reacting to the buttons being pressed, which is nice. So it's definitely the UI that is the problem. So this isn't firing, which is odd to say the least. So it must be. So either that's not firing for some reason, although the channel's obviously working, because if the channel wasn't working, then this filter here wouldn't work. So the channel works definitely. It's just that. So let's assume a bug. Listen for gameplay messages. Let's just set it up again. Bridge commands power, and we're sending a dummy struct because we don't need to do anything with it. Yeah, and let's just remake the for each loop, because what I did is I just copy pasted the previous line, so it might be the case that me copy pasting that caused something to go awry. And just to satisfy my own curiosity, I'll see whether or not it does actually react to things happening on that channel. If this doesn't work, then I'm slightly confused. Yeah, I'll have a look, see what it says. No, Melissa, the ship will be fully fueled when you leave Earth. So on a brand new game, you'll have topped up tanks. The only reason you start at 75% at the moment is for testing. Yeah, I think it's more the case that the either that messaging channel is not firing properly. Well, that must be it. That's the only thing I can think of. Or the array's empty, but we know the array's not empty because we've already checked it. So the channel success. Yeah. So we've got a power channel success. So we know, right, so we know that, that this is working. So we're definitely receiving a gameplay message on that channel. So the only thing that it could be is that this is coming back empty. Which would, I think I've just figured it out. Of course, we're sending a message to retrieve this, but of course there's a function for this as part of the blueprint interface. So on here, we need to go into our interfaces and find wherever it is, that one, and do this. Boop. And now it's fixed. Like I said, it's always something stupid. Probably going to be useful if I create the full interface for all the different bridge stations ahead of time, because I know that the next bridge station I add, I'm going to forget this again and come into the same problem again. Yeah, you're not wrong. It's always DNS. Yeah. That function was a blueprint interface. So if you're not familiar with blueprint interfaces, basically it's a way of passing data between blueprints without having to cast to them. So the blueprint interface is like a channel that you can send and receive data on. If you are sending data, then the only thing you need at the other end is for that interface to be implemented on the blueprint and to be an event on the event graph that can then process that message as it comes through. If it's something that you're retrieving, so if you're pulling data via a blueprint interface, then you need to create a function on the blueprint you're pulling the data from, and that's what that function was. It took me a while, years ago, to get my head around that. Sending is very different from pulling on blueprint interfaces. There we go. Hurrah, hurrah. Basically, yeah, so where was it? So this blueprint interface, you configure it here. So get bridge orders, you set that up as a function, and obviously there's nothing connected to it here at all. It just exists as a potential function. It exists in a state of potentiality. And then when you implement that interface on a class, so if we go down and look at our class settings, you can see that we've got the blueprint interface shipwide orders as an implemented interface. Once you implement it, you then have it come up under the interfaces list. So these are all the functions that we specify here. So we create the function as part of the interface, and then we work with it here. They're color coded, so the yellow ones are events. So if I was to double click that, you can see that it's already been implemented here as an event. So if you were to fire the message of this blueprint on that particular function, then this gets fired and this stuff happens. The grey ones are ones that have to return data back to the requester, and for those ones you actually set them up as a function properly within the blueprint. So you kind of lose sight of them because they don't appear up here in your list of functions. They appear down here under the interfaces, and especially if you have them nested like this, so you can't see that that's there. But of course, out of sight, out of mind, I forgot that I'd added a new struct that I had to then pipe across. But what this does is it gives, where are we? So on the command console here, all I'm doing is I'm getting a reference to the task manager, and I'm sending the message, which is why it's got a little picture of an envelope on it, to get. So we're getting data rather than sending it. This didn't require any casting whatsoever. So this is basically, there's no reference chain involved in this, and neither the sender nor receiver know about each other because it's all channeled through the blueprint interface itself, completely removing all reference chains and greatly sort of cleaning up the code structure. They're a godsend. They're amazing. If you can do it via a blueprint interface rather than casting, then you should do, basically. They're supremely more efficient. So that's why this works. And of course, without actually hooking up the function on the source blueprint, of course there'd be no data there to work with, which is why it wasn't working. I am in game still, yeah. Okay, so we've got a task here for open refill valves, which is sat there quite happily. So if I go ahead and go click, 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 and we quickly run over here, there, it disappeared. So if I now raise a task again for open refill valves, that would have appeared and disappeared immediately. If I get the camera where we can see it, you can see it flashing up because the task manager checking completion checks 10 times per second, which is why it just flicks on and off. If we raise it for closed refill valves, it will now linger because the valves are open, and then as soon as we close those valves, like so, it will disappear like that. So that just shows that it's now working end to end and everything's being tracked nicely. So the next step in the process here, now that we've got the order creation and the order tracking and self-automated closing sorted out, the next thing to do is to teach this NPC how to press those buttons. And I was thinking about how across the scope of the entire game, how we keep this manageable, because for every NPC that we have, we need to have like a catalogue of skills that they have. So what we're doing is we're basically teaching them to do individual jobs. Even if it's pressing a single button, they need to know how to press that individual button. So we are making small scripts that are essentially a set of instructions with a bit of logic involved. So it does state checking as part of the process flow. Basically, each one is a flowchart, and those flowcharts allow the NPC to do the thing that you're asking them to do. It would be nice, rather than configuring those on the NPCs themselves, it would be nice if we had a central resource of skills that were like a standalone object that we can pull in to any NPC that needs it. So rather than configuring functions on the NPC to do these things, we need like a centralized database of skills, and then we can pull in the skill from each NPC, which keeps it all centrally managed and centralized, and allows us a much more reusability and compartmentalization, which means that in an organic environment, if this guy on the tactical station needed to do something over here on this console, so say there was an explosion, this person's knocked out, they can't access this console anymore, someone else on the bridge needs to press those buttons, and if you're not doing it as the player, then one of the other NPCs needs to be able to do it. So if the skill required to press those buttons was centrally organized, then a tactical NPC could pull that skill as they need it, and then they are able to do the job that needs to be done on here. So it means that we're no longer training an individual NPC to do the job, we're providing the means for all of the NPCs to do any of the jobs when needed. Because we definitely want to get to the point where, if, say the ship's been boarded by a hostile alien species, and you've got alien bad guys running around the hallways, like, we want the chef or a janitor, if there's a gun on the floor, to pick that gun up and shoot the things that are invading the ship. We need to make sure we have the flexibility and the logic that they can act outside of their wheelhouse. So even if they're busy watering some plants with a watering can, they can drop the watering can, grab a gun, and at least try and defend themselves. That's the plan anyway. So yeah, so centralizing those skills would be the way to do that. So I need to make sure that I kind of proceed with that being the long-term objective. Yes, there will be a sick bay for such occasions. The command orders on the command console, they are raised by the ship's computer for the most part, so we do need to change that slightly, because something Claire pointed out when she was playtesting is that if she spawns an NPC captain and she sits in the censor's chair, then obviously the first thing the captain asked her to do was go and find an Earth-like candidate, which is fine. You know, as the player, she can do that and find one, but she has no way of telling the captain, okay, I found one, especially if they're not on the bridge. So we need to handle that by way of the UI. So on the little order that pops up on the UI, rather than just having it magically disappear, I think we need to make it so that when the objective has been met, the NPC or the player presses the complete button, or at least the check completion button, to trigger the system to say, okay, let me verify what you're saying. Yes, I agree, you have indeed found an Earth-like candidate. And then that raises the order on the command console for the captain to say, you know, something is awaiting your attention. Because we want to make sure that if the captain's not on the bridge at the time, then that filters through to either their little wearable HUD thing that they'll have, or a tablet or something, to alert them that they're needed on the bridge, even if it's a simple thing where the ship's computer says, captain to the bridge. So we need to make sure that we have that feedback mechanism so that all the different bridge stations can feed back to the captain by way of using the UIs. Because of course the other objective with this is that multi-language crews can work together effectively without needing to speak each other's language. Because if you're just selecting menu items, and then those menu items are performing tasks and raising actions for other bridge stations, then communication in the same language is not required because it's all handled by the back end. So these are all the little nitty-gritties that need to be thought about and implemented to make sure the system is really, really smooth. And Sawbones, yeah, you're right, equipment usage as well. So yeah, how to use certain tools. I haven't quite found the best use for the tablets yet. So all of the NPC crew members are going to have an AR headset. So it will look like a little Bluetooth headset by their ear, but it's what's projecting your HUD. So the HUD you see in game, obviously not the work in progress one that's there now, but when we actually do the proper visually nice HUD, that's being projected by a little thing on the side of your face. The controls for that are going to be on a wrist device. And this is needed for VR as well. So the idea is, and in the animation as it will be, the character will bring up their arm, interact with the wrist device, and that's what's creating the display in front of your face. So you'll be able to turn the wheel to use menus and all that sort of stuff. And obviously that plays well in VR. So in VR, you'll interact with the wrist thing and it brings up the UI and you can interact with it. That is so much better than holding a tablet. So it is, where do we fit the tablet into this? Having a tablet with data on it is great, and I'm sure there are things we can use that for, but for the most part, pressing your wrist and having a screen in front of your face is a lot more usable than an old-fashioned clunky tablet. But Claire had a good idea for them where she suggested we should use them for the cold and dark tutorial. So we could have certain processes available on tablets, just on a desk in engineering. So when you pick the tablet up, you've got the step-by-step instructions on how to go through a cold and dark sequence, just by holding the tablet and reading it. But I'm sure we'll find a use for them. Yeah, probably, Max, to be honest. I think with the functional stuff being on your HUD, again, like I've mentioned in the past, if you pick up a weapon or a tool, I want your AR unit on your head to have Bluetooth connection to that device. So if you pick up a gun, the little ammo readout it says on your HUD is because this device is speaking to the gun. So they do a Bluetooth connection, and now the ammo readout is available. If you put the gun down, the ammo readout goes away because you've just broken that connection. So that's kind of the level of the technological interaction with the things in the game. Your AR unit is basically a computer. It's a mobile. It's not so much a human interface device. It's more an overlay on the world. Which I believe is the future of mobile computing. I think once we have effective tools that can project a HUD in your vision, then the possibilities for that with data overlays are huge. Being able to look at a monument and see all the history and details from it. Looking at someone and have their name come up because you've forgotten their name. You don't need to remember their name because it says it on screen. Obviously they can't see that their names come up, but yeah, there's little reminders like that. Or you walk into a supermarket and it says, don't forget to buy milk. Or in our case, don't forget to buy cat food because they never stop eating. But yeah, I think AR headsets are the future, and we'll explore that in the game. So what I create in the game is kind of my vision for what I think mobile computing will be as technology improves. The Apple II, yeah, I like that. See you, Quickers. Me have a good one. Yeah, I think having a data overlay all the time in the world would be incredibly useful. It's like, I can think of like a bazillion different instances where that would be handy. Like, I don't know, you look at a plant and you don't know what it is. All of a sudden you now know what it is. It's giving you a level of knowledge that you otherwise wouldn't have. I think, yes, there's an argument to be made that it's dumbing down humanity because you no longer have to think and learn because it's just sort of spoon feeding you the information. But yeah, what about like a surgeon performing surgery? There could be lots of stats and things all over the place in their vision assisting what they're doing, or a car mechanic working on a vehicle. As you're working on the vehicle, you've got a UI which is highlighting certain components. Yeah, there could be so many reasons where really integrated AR could be a huge boon. So that's why we're doing it. I'm very excited for a technology that doesn't exist yet. Because every attempt at it so far has been very bulky and not how I would imagine it to be. Right, what were we doing? NPC. Right then. So here is where we build the skills. And like with the helm and everything, we're going to do it on the NPC themselves for now, until we have that centralized resource. So each and every NPC basically does this. And I'm doing it in the event graph so that I can use delay timers. Because sometimes it's handy just to delay something for a second, just to slow the NPC down and make their cadence a bit more human. So we're going to basically copy this. I guess we don't need that. Do we need that? We probably don't need that. Saying that, we probably do need the UI. Alright, let's copy the whole thing and tweak as we go, because we need the NPC to have the ability to obviously interact with the UI in front of them. So we only want them to run on the server, so we just do a check there. As soon as all the levels are loaded, we will grab a reference to, in this case, not the helm console, but no. What did I call that class? BP console engineering power. BP console engineering power. Okay. So we're checking that all the levels are loaded first. Now we can safely grab that and promote that to a variable. So that is our power UI. So now we can use this to send messages from the NPC to that panel. There is only one of them in the world, so we don't need to check for tags or anything like that. Okay. So if there's an NPC active, then we'll start running our timer. So the first thing we need to check So are there any power tasks? Check for tasks. So rather than using that one, we're using that one. I always work from top down. Yeah, to get that class. And then we'll promote this. We just call that our current task. So if we've got a task, we keep a copy of that task and output yes. This is where we handle assignment. This is not necessary specifically right now, but we'll go through the loop anyway. So if our state is pending, we return true, and then we update it. So we get our current task, set members. So we want to set our state as assigned because we've basically just assigned it to ourselves. And then we just update the task manager with the updated task. Yeah, we're not doing anything with that right now, so that can go. So what that's doing is that's just telling the task manager that something has been updated. It doesn't care what, just that something's been updated. So it will replace its version of this in the array with this version, and it will loop through and find a matching order ID. So we don't need to specify it because it's already held within the struct. So that handles assignment. Obviously, if there are no tasks, we do nothing. So here's the bit where we teach them how to do stuff. So each bridge station obviously has a version of this, and this is where we define a skill. So each one of these subgraphs is essentially a script that tells them how to do something. So if we get rid of hang on, let's just no, we don't need that. Okay, get rid of those. So that will do. So open refill valves, close refill valves, and to kind of make it more clear what it is we're actually doing, these are skills that we are teaching them. So I'll be able to copy paste the close as the inversion of the open. So once per second, we check for tasks, set them to assigned if they need to be, and then we simply action those tasks. And engineering, at least on the power, has not much to do. One set of buttons, that's it. So obviously the last thing we do is update the UI, but we need to work out what it is we're actually pressing now. So we've got a reference to our power UI. So we need to basically channel the same action as what happens on the UI. So on our UI here, when we press the buttons, and these are the button presses here, what we're doing is we are sending a message to the individual valves to tell them to open or close. Now what we really want to do is to pipe this through the player controller to make sure that it all works nicely in multiplayer, because right now this won't, because it's not doing it authoritatively. So for now, I think what I'll do is we'll handle, maybe put a custom event on each of these, because we want, in every instance of the NPC doing a job, what I could do is I could just fire the reference straight to the valve from the NPC, like the NPC is like psychically turning the valve off with their mind. But what I want them to do is press the button. So we want the NPCs to be interacting with the UIs the same way that the player does. But we need to build the mechanism to do that. So we'll just add a couple of custom events in here just to give the NPC an action. So if we just call it like NPC open helium, NPC close helium, and so on and so on. NPC open helium 3. NPC close helium 3. NPC open deuterium. NPC close deuterium. Should I spell that right? That usually helps, doesn't it? Deuterium. There we go. Right, and each one of these simply goes into the corresponding action. So when I come along later and I start routing these via the player controller, it means that these won't need updating because we've already done them. So that's all that handled on the UI side. So these buttons here are the equivalent of the NPC pressing the button, because when the player presses the button, this fires, and when the NPC presses it, this fires, but both of them do the same thing in the same order. So those actions are coming down the chain from the same source. So it shouldn't make, at any stage in the process, it shouldn't make any difference whether the NPC presses a button or a player presses a button. The result should always be the same, and we're basically making sure that is always the case on every UI. And obviously whether you click this with the mouse or whether you click it in VR with your finger in VR, it doesn't matter how that button gets activated by the player, the same thing always happens. So again, it's already also built with VR in mind. No additional code is needed to make that work in VR. Right, and then from the console, what we need is a reference to our UI. Not sure whether we do it. Yes, we do already. Good. Yeah, so we're grabbing a copy of our widget. So I guess the easiest way to do this just switch on string. There we go. If we have an event on here, something like NPC button press, like so, and then we obviously give that our string and call that button ID, or rather more specifically action ID. Then we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we'll have NPC open helium, NPC close helium, NPC open helium 3, NPC close helium 3, NPC open deuterium, NPC close deuterium. And we don't need a default pen on there. Okay, so from, I'll just compile that a minute. What are you complaining about? Oh, forgot to put 3 on the end. Yeah, so now that we've done this and set that up, then on here, all we need to do is we need to do NPC button press. Is that? Oh, that's the wrong UI. It doesn't help. Hang on. Set power UI. BP nav panel. Why is that? It's because I used the previous get. So of course it set the reference as BP nav panel when it should be that. So it's BP console engineering power. BP console engineering power object reference. Wait for it to do its thing. Yes, James, there are 3 tanks on the UI, which there. So here's the bridge, and you've got 3 tanks over there, and there's also a red bar above. So if any of these tanks hit 10%, the red bar starts flashing to indicate that fuel is low. It's not particularly obvious when it's flashing, but it's obvious if you're sat in the chair. And there are also 4 lights, of course. Right, that's better. So now we've got the correct reference to that. Hang on, let's clear up some of these errors. There we go. Where was I doing this? In here. Right, power UI. Okay, so NPC button press. There we go, it's better. So all I need to do is just give it the action ID NPC open helium, and what that will do is on the blueprint that comes through here. So then that just needs to go through to the widget, because we can't access the widget directly, or rather we shouldn't access the widget directly, because widgets never replicate. We simply do NPC open helium like that. NPC close NPC close helium, and we do this 6 times. Open helium 3, close helium 3, open deuterium and close deuterium. Okay. So we've got our routing done for those NPC commands coming through, and then that goes through to the UI, which of course was those 6 events we created there, and ultimately they go through to the valves. Now, in order to do this properly, rather than just doing that 3 times arbitrarily, it would be good to be able to physically check whether or not they are open or closed, because we need to simulate the NPC looking at the screen. So we need to work out what can the NPC see right now. And this is going to mean creating another set of hard references to these valves. That thing that we didn't want to do. Because we're going to need a reference to that stuff. So we're already checking levels loaded. We don't need to do that twice. So we'll just add another pin on there. Okay, so this just gives us a reference to the valves. Now obviously in the code logic we're querying those valves directly rather than reading what's on the screen. This just gives us a better source of truth, essentially. So what we can do on here, now that we have these references set up, we want to do these one at a time rather than doing them all at once, because again we want the NPC to be doing things with a human cadence. So the first thing we want to do, I guess for this one, so if we get a state, so this is a simple integer. 0 is open, 1 is transitioning, 2 is closed. That might be inversed, I can't remember now. But basically, we need to logic our way through what the current state is. So, again, so this is ticking once per second. So every second we're doing this check. So if we, so if that is equal to 0, which I think is closed, I might need to swap that round. So if that's equal to closed, then we can open it. Because if it's 1, then it's currently transitioning between open and closed. If it's 2, it's closed. It's open already. So we only want it to press the open button if it is in fact closed. That's the only state where we want it to do that. Otherwise, basically we're doing nothing. But we need to duplicate this 3 times. Because we need to check each one. So that one's open helium-3, that one's open deuterium, and then we need to check those valves. So helium-3 valve, deuterium valve. Yeah, so we don't want to do that actually. What we want to do, and we could do it in line, is we want to do a delay on here. I guess we can't do, oh, actually no, we can. Yes, we can, because if we flag that we're doing an action, yeah, so if we had a busy variable, invert that, so we want the NPC to be active and we want them to be not busy. Okay, and then what we'll do here is we will set busy to be true. Actually, what we'll do, we won't set it there. We will set busy to be true in all the places that we're going to want to do a delay. So busy can stay defaulted to false, but on here we will set busy to true, because we're about to delay. So that will stop the logic from ticking whilst we're doing something here. So we're going to check our first valve and it will delay for a second. And if it's false, we will just skip it. So I'll skip this valve and move on to the next one. Yeah, and it probably is better just to do these in line like this, just for the sake of simplicity. Okay, so it's always waiting a second between each one. Just update that one to helium-3, update that one to deuterium, and then when we're done, we will set that to no longer busy. In fact, we don't need a delay at the end, do we? And the reason we're sticking in these delays is we want them to press a button, press a button, press a button. We don't want them doing like all buttons at once. Press, 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 because we want their cadence to be like human cadence. So press that one, wait a second, press that one, wait a second, press that one, and then clear our busy state. We don't need don't need that. Okay. Now on close, we're going to do the opposite of that. So we can use the same logic, but this time we're going to check if the state is 2 rather than 1. Now again, I might have got this the wrong way around, but this one is going to be close. Oh yeah, I need to rename this on the other one as well. Close deuterium, close helium-3, and close helium. So again, if it's not the actual open or closed state, it will skip it. And we just need to make sure we rename this one back. So that one was helium-3, and that one was deuterium. Okay, so that should be the NPC now able to open and close those valves based on their current state. So if they're already open, it will leave them open. It won't try and open something that's already open. So let's go and see whether they can. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the NPCs being a lot more physicalized than they currently are. So yes, stubbing a toe would definitely have to be a random thing. I mean, they definitely need to randomly hurt themselves so that they go to sickbay. Yeah, I think once the NPCs are sentient, for want of a better word, I can think of a few YouTubers that are going to make their lives hell. Yep, they will be animated soon enough. We just need to replace our current system with MetaHuman, and then then we can animate them from there. There's no point putting all the effort into animations when we're literally about to replace the system. Hang on a minute, why is there nobody in the chair? Why are they facing over there? What's wrong with them? It's all gone wrong. Right, so right now all the valves are open, so I want all the valves are closed. I want them to open them all. So if I say open refill valves, you should press all three buttons. Maybe. What about close? Hang on, let me check that I've got that 0 or 2 the right way around, because there's every chance that I got it wrong. You know, ultimately I had a 50-50 chance of getting it right, so that's the tanks. So 0 is open, 2 is closed. 0 is open, 2 is closed. Did I get that the wrong way around? Yes, I did. Knew I would. So the other thing we wanted to check was make sure that they spawn. So can spawn, default active, yeah, so they should have spawned. Did I inadvertently break something? Nope, nothing there to indicate that that would do anything. Yeah, let's just try again. Yes, Melissa, you will be able to speak to them at some point. The worst it will be is just a random choice procedurally made dialogue. The best it will be is if we get a local model running in the game that can do like AI conversations from the NPCs. But as I have to caveat every single stream, just in case anyone hasn't seen my previous answers on the subject, we will not put an LLM in the game unless it's physically running within the game client and only within the game client, and that it doesn't have any kind of external connectivity requirements, and that it's trained on our own data. So it's going to be a small, probably a 1 gig model that can run in 1 gig of VRAM, and nothing bigger than that, because otherwise then you're just asking for trouble. It doesn't need to be able to do math or reason or anything like that. It just needs to be able to hold a conversation between 2 NPCs. That's it. That's all it needs to be able to do. So hopefully we can fit that in a 1 gig model. Okay, so oddly, the NPC's not appearing in the chair. So presumably that's something I broke when I was messing with it. But, okay, let's try and encourage them back. Of course, they're going to face that way now by default. Right, open valves. Let's just check the council actually while we're here. Yeah, that doesn't work either. Alright, that also needs fixing. Right, so why are you not opening the valves? Let us debug that next. Okay, so first things first, let's just check this to make sure that we are spawning what we should be spawning. I suppose the easiest thing is to find our boolean for that. I really need to put these in folders. Okay, so if we can spawn an NPC and default active is true and all the rest of this is set as it should be, then we should set that. So we set our mesh details, do a bunch of visual stuff, then we randomize from department. Oh, did I remove the parent call? I think that's where I've gone wrong with this. I've removed the call to parent. So of course it's not running the parent begin play stuff. That would explain what was going on there, which means the reference to the task manager also wouldn't have been there, which is probably why it wasn't working. Yeah, Claire does a great job. If you ever have any issues with accounts or Kickstarter or anything with backer rewards or anything like that, then just message Claire. She will sort you out. Absolutely. She is mistress of the spreadsheets. Yeah, it took me a long time. Right. They're in the chair now because the begin play stuff was playing, so let's fix that. So I'm reasonably confident they should now open the valves. Yeah, there they go. One at a time, human cadence. And let's just check on here as well. Okay, so if we tell them to close the valves, we should see the order appear, the valves will get closed, and then the order should disappear when they're in their state. There we go. Right, so if I set the ship to 10% fuel, like that, so ship's running out of fuel, alarms are on. No, I didn't want to do that. Wrong button. I wanted to do that. Turn the lights back on. Okay, so the alarm's flashing. You've only got 10% fuel left. So let's see whether we can refuel the ship as captain. So the first thing I want to do is bring up our medium range sensors. Okay. One thing I want to do actually is when you click an object like that, I kind of need them to automatically scale the display, because right now I've removed the zoom in and out controls because they were really clunky and difficult to deal with. So what I might do is, rather than having zoom in and out, I might have just a single command for scale the display so that it scales appropriately to what you're looking at. But anyway, so if we tell the helm to go there, I'm assuming that was a gas giant, and we shall see. Yeah, it should be fairly obvious that the fuel tanks are low. Obviously, it's only bright if you're all the way over here, simply because obviously there's only so many pixels it can render. So you do need to be able to catch it out of the corner of your eye before we have like proper alerts set up. Okay, so we're approaching a gas giant, or an ice giant to be specific. You can warp at 10% power, but you won't get anywhere very fast. Right. So we are now alongside a gas giant. So what we want to do is we want to fill up those tanks over there. So if we now ask them to open the refill valves, we should see them do that, and then the tanks should start filling, and then the alarm light should go off. Yep, there we go. So the alarm's disappeared, tanks are filling. Obviously they're filling slowly, but you can see here that we've got a refill rate going on. So right now they're filling up at 500 litres per second. If I were to kick them out of the chair and take control myself, if I fly closer to Uranus, okay, now the closer we get, the higher the refuel rate will go up. Okay, so we're now capped out at 1,000 litres per second because we got that much closer to Uranus. Okay, disengage that before we plough into it. So obviously we don't have a ship-wide order yet for waiting for the ship to be fully filled, fully fueled. So that would be the next step. Okay, so now that we are fully filled up, we can just tell them to close the valves and they will do that. Okay, there we go, valves are closed. Oops. Valves are closed, refill rate is down to 0, and now our fuel levels will begin to start dropping again because we're now using up the fuel that we just harvested. Okay, so let's take stock. So with the orders to open and close the valves are in the system. We've got a power NPC which can now take orders. They can now actually action those orders with the skills we taught them. So you should now be able to fly to a gas giant and refuel the ship without getting out the chair, which is good. So the next thing, I suppose the next thing before we specifically give it to a captain is to create a ship-wide order for refueling the ship. So we start adding that automation in there. So rather than like telling them to bring up the map and telling them to go there and telling them manually to open the valves, rather than having to micromanage these NPCs, we want to create a very simple ship-wide order for refuel the ship. Because you shouldn't need to micromanage them. So when you create refuel the ship as an order, they will then look for a gas giant. They will then send that to the helm will then fly to the gas giant, and then they will start opening the valves to refill the tanks, and then when the tanks are full, then the ship-wide order should be cleared and everything should be done. And we also need to make sure that a command task is raised to acknowledge the fact that the order has been completed. So we need to make sure we keep that feedback loop. Yes, exactly that. Ploughing Uranus for gas. Yes, we went there. So I suppose the first thing we need to do, we need to, I guess, manage the radial menu. So the radial menu is built dynamically depending on where you are and what you're looking at. So the radial menu options you get don't all necessarily come from the same place. So obviously the ones we've been dealing with are coming from the chair master, this one. So this is what generates the menu options when you're looking at the chair. If you're not looking at a chair, then it's going to come from our player character, that one. So when we press F, that one, F. So if we are looking at nothing, then we build our radial menu from here. And this ensures that the thing you're looking at has the responsibility of providing the menu options that are relevant to itself. So you're not having to pre-generate any menus. They're all completely dynamic based on the needs of the target. So like the example I gave before with the globe, the ability to spin the globe is only relevant to a globe. So that menu option should only ever come from the globe, so that it's not taking up valuable menu space elsewhere. Okay, so orders, ship-wide orders. So we're going to have to add one to here. So explore target system obviously has some check criteria, and those criteria are that we are in a star system, that we have one targeted, and this one requires that you are in one. So we will add refuel the ship. I suppose because we want to preserve as much radial menu space as we can, because it's very easy to overload the radial menu with too much stuff. So we want to make sure that it's always very context aware. So the option to refuel the ship should not be there unless the ship actually needs refueling. But we need to decide on at what point does that become a valid option. So I'm thinking maybe 75% tank fill, because you might want to just keep the tanks topped up the whole time, in which case if they ever drop below 75%, then you want to refill them. Yeah, I think 75 is probably a decent number, because it's high enough that if you want to keep them topped off, you can, but it's not so high that the menu option's always going to be there, getting in your way. Okay, so this is going to require more hard references, funnily enough, to the tanks. Yeah, so we need to reference the tanks here, and basically query all three of them, and if any of them drop below 75%, that's our trigger. So it doesn't matter which one drops below 75. If any of them do, then the order comes up. At least it makes the order available for selection. What should we call it? So refill fuel tanks. Or even better, get out of the way. Refuel the ship. There we go. So on ship-wide refuel ship. So sending on the ship-wide channel, refuel ship. For now, let's just pin it up, and I'll do the logic. afterwards. Just make sure it comes up on the menu. So it goes on the level 2 menu, refuel the ship, blah blah blah. Don't want to remain open. Yep, okay. And then on I guess that's going to go straight through to the player controller, but I will check our event graph first, which I can never find. Yeah, so we should come straight through here, go straight through to the default channel there. So that should go straight through to player controller. So ship wide goes through to there, which means we need to add on here, which is ship wide refuel ship, which is what we just typed. Although to be absolutely, completely, doubly sure, let's just make sure that we typed the right thing. Ship wide refuel ship. Let's just copy that and paste that in there to make sure there are no typos. Yeah, okay, so we just want to create the order. We don't need to worry about targets or anything. So we'll just grab that, pop that down there. Oh no, pop that up there. Pop that down there. Remembered the R thing. So nice. Okay, so we don't need to give it a target because this is just a general order. We need to add it to the list of orders as well. So refuel the vessel from the nearest gas giant. Okay. Yeah, before we can send that through, of course, we need to sort out the order. I was hoping I could browse to type. Can I please browse to type? Please let me browse to type. Oh, to find it instead. There it is. Okay, so refuel the ship. That should be all we need on there. And then on here, that should now have refuel the ship available to it. Okay, and then for the ship-wide tasks, they are managed exclusively on the task manager. So So here we do our ship-wide orders, and then each one of these obviously has the logic flowchart associated with it. So this is where we go through once per second, checking all of our logic states and determining what Helm orders need to be raised, what sensors orders need to be raised in order to complete this objective. So we're going to have sensors looking for the nearest gas giant, Helm taking us there, and then this one would be maybe the engineering one, open the valves, and then of course one of these checks is going to be, are the tanks full yet? It's probably the first thing we check actually, are the tanks full? So we need to do that. Yeah, so if we duplicate this, refuel the ship, and then we can just basically fire this when it's needed. So again, this is once per second. We check to see if we've got any orders. If we do, then we have a function for each one where we do our logic. So right now we're doing nothing, and we're going to have time tonight because it's almost midnight. But yeah, so the next job will be to build the logic to make sure that the NPC crew are doing the right things in the right order in order to successfully refuel the vessel. What we need to check now is make sure that the ship-wide order actually gets set properly from the radial menu, and that will basically drive everything else. Yeah, we could definitely do with a tank depletion timer. I think that would be definitely valuable to have. Probably really easy as well, because we know how much the tanks are outputting at any given moment. Because we've got access to all the different valves and things. So we can simply calculate expenditure versus current fill. And from that we can work out how long that current fill will last for. And then we can just put that on the UI. Just put down a time to depletion. That should be easy enough. And we've already got access to the tank data. Yeah, we definitely will put an audible alarm on there. Obviously, we'll do that once we're done with it. Let's get the logic working first, and then we'll think about the other stuff. Like when the voice dialogue for all the NPCs, that'll be one of the last things I do. Yeah, because there's so much other stuff that needs doing. Right, so ship-wide orders. Press F. Orders. Ship-wide orders. So refuel the ship is now there. We click that, we now have refuel the ship. Don't know why that's justified all the way over there, that needs fixing. But yes, so we have the ability to refuel it, and we have the ability to cancel it, which is good. Okay, so before we can give this to the captain as a command that can be issued, obviously we need to get it working manually first. So if we manually raise that order, we need to make sure that the sensor's NPC is capable of identifying a gas giant. Right now, they're only really capable of looking for Earth-likes or Earth-like candidates, but we can certainly copy-paste the bulk of that code and change the reference to is it a gas giant, They'll check the current system first, which is always the practical thing to do, and then they'll pick the closest gas giant within the current system. If there isn't one in the current system, then they'll pick the next closest system and do a long-range scan to see if there's a gas giant there they can use. So I think that's probably the logic flow for that. And then once one has been identified, obviously the task gets raised for the helm to fly there. And then once they're there, then the tasks get passed over here to the engineering station. So the logic flow should be quite simple. We just need to build it, basically, which is the time-consuming part. Yeah, he is. He's sentient. I have to teach the captain how to do everything. So how long have we got? Right, so we've got like 3 minutes left. What can we do in 3 minutes? Can I get a time to depletion done? Probably not, but let's just check to see whether that data is available to us. I have a feeling it probably is, and it shouldn't be too difficult. Where is it? That one. Yeah, so when we get our tank data from here, we are literally grabbing the current fill. So in addition to that, in fact, if we grab that, yeah, just that. No, not cut. Copy. And we pop that over here. And then we can also get hang on, we need to work out the outflow pipe and make sure that that is properly recording how much fluid is leaving the tank, because there's two of them. One is the actual pump that goes out to feed the ship, the other one is the overflow valve, and we need to compare the two because it's obviously the amount of fluid that's leaving the tank is the sum of those two valves. There we are, fluid system, fluid tank. We need to look at our tank tick. Okay, so we are... Okay, so what we're actually sending is the requested flow, and then what we're sending, so the overflow, is that. So it's plus the 10. So that'll be 10 liters per second, I believe. Yeah, so that's the variable we're interested in, plus 10. Just make sure. Actually, no, that's. Oh no, this one. This is the one we want. So relief flowing to blah 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 blah. Its current volume is that. So it's boil off rate. Right. So boil off rate and output requested. Get boil off rate. Get output requested flow. Right, so that plus that. So that's the total amount of contents that the tank is losing per second, basically. So that divided by that, that's how many seconds it will take for that to empty, because we know that we are outputting this amount per second. So that's our time in seconds. So we can basically use that to calculate our time to depletion. So we'll just turn the seconds into minutes and hours. And yeah, and we'll put that on there. So I won't add that now because it's 2 minutes past midnight, but that's how we'll do it, and it should be reasonably simple to do. Okay. Well, I think we made some progress there. We've got an NPC that we can command to open and close some valves. We've got a bridge order for refueling the ship. And yeah, everything is being tracked and managed. Not bad for 4 hours. Don't know what you guys are going on about. Estimated ETA timer, yes. Yeah, I'd like to put that in a few different places, just so there's more information richness in the bridge, so that you can see what's going on a little bit more clearly. But yeah. Right, I shall leave it there. I hope you had a good stream. I know I did. And I shall see you all on the next one. In fact, what day even is it? It's Saturday. Ah, great, okay. So, well, it's Saturday now, so I shall see you all on Sunday's stream. Have a good weekend, and bye for now.